Joey, what episode is this?
15.
Episode 15 in the Bushes podcast. I'm really excited to have Mike Griffin. So Mike Griffin, thanks for joining me, man. Really excited to have you. This has been what I've wanted to do for a long time here, so appreciate it, brother.
Awesome. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so want to talk briefly first here from Canada. What is baseball like in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's definitely growing,
Uh-huh.
and it has grown over the last 20 years especially. There's been some very influential, not only coaches, such as Greg Hamilton, some very influential coaches, but some all-star players, Justin Morneau, Joey Votto.
Sure.
Those guys have really helped take the game to the next level. But yeah, growing up, you play hockey and baseball typically. Right. And then in my case, once you start getting invited to maybe a Team Canada junior national team program, you start to have to choose between the two. But yeah, it's hockey and baseball.
Yeah, sneaky. A lot of good baseball players have come out of there, I feel like. Did you play hockey growing up?
I did.
Yeah,
played
hockey.
hockey.
Right, you have to, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to start doing both. But there's a lot of crossover movements. There's a lot of good hockey players that, when they start focusing on baseball, they can hit, they can do some things.
That's true.
Larry Walker was like that.
Yeah. It's another good one right there, dude. Yeah, that's awesome. Because you think Canada, you don't really think baseball, but again, there's been so many good players that have come out of there. And we'll get to this probably more in depth here, but I just want to kind of open it up with you. You're a pretty traveled person. You've been literally everywhere, I feel like. What has been your favorite place that the game of baseball has taken you?
Man, that's a very good question. Like you said, I think it's something about 40 countries now. But favorite spot, honestly, the World Baseball Classic in Tokyo, Japan.
Okay.
This past year, it was a fantastic memory, and I love.
Was that your first time there?
No, I worked in Japan previously with Major League Baseball as
Okay.
well, so I've always loved Japan. That experience in particular was great in Miyazaki and then in Tokyo. And then wasn't a high level baseball experience, but Hong Kong has always been a special place. And then I lived in Prague, Czech Republic.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Managed the Czech Republic national team for years, and all those three cities definitely are pretty special cities. Yeah,
I love it. And something that you've brought to my attention, and I had no idea that this was actually a thing. It was during the Pro5 intro meeting. You mentioned animals that you've eaten.
Oh,
so I don't know if it's the top 5 type thing for you, but what would your top 5 animals that you've eaten? Because obviously you wouldn't say that if there's been some exotic type creatures that you've dabbled in.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been some exotic animals eaten over the travels. Now, there's a few dishes I had no idea what I was eating.
Okay.
There's
so they didn't tell
bowls of
you're not gonna say or
animals, but I mean the one that was probably toughest was just a big turtle. It was a big pan that was in China.
Okay.
That was
in the shell?
An official meeting. There was it was baked, shell and all. It was a big turtle, shell and all. I had some sauce and different things, and it was baked and cooked, and you just kind of
like
take your chopsticks and and you just pick it apart and go from there. We had that same dinner had some bowls of jellyfish, and it was just like take your pick. And,
really?
Yeah, some baseball coaches and some government officials were in a special dinner, and
wow,
and it was special.
No, I'd say so. I don't know what I would do if and you had no idea that was coming out. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'll have the turtle, please. Like it just
they have one guy that orders, one official orders for everybody. There's probably about 15 people at the table, and
I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah, no, you've seen some things.
Wow. Well, baseball's taken you to a lot of different places, obviously, and through a lot of different meals. So that's pretty cool, man. I didn't expect you to say that. So here we are. Just transition a little bit. Let's talk about your baseball journey. From my research, when I found, you were kind of one of the better players in Canada for a long time, right? And then 2002, you kind of had a freak injury that kind of altered your path. So I kind of want you to speak to that, and leading up to that, what kind of interest did you have from a college perspective, pro perspective, that type of thing?
Yeah, so I guess really briefly, was in the Canadian national team program. Was top hitter awards kind of growing up through the junior national teams. Just actually with Team Canada after spring training in Florida, we were playing all the spring training rookie ball teams, getting ready for World Baseball Championships and stuff. Came back home after that and had a game where in Vancouver, and just had a bad hop, kind of line drive, hit kind of off the lip in foul territory, back to the face at third base. Long story short, it was a lot of rehab. It was about, I think, 6-7 operations.
Wow.
They couldn't control the bleeding. There was arteries bursting in my head. So I was in the ICU for a long time. Had to, supposed to be kind of blind, had to learn how to walk again, but I can see good.
It's crazy.
Walking, kind of bedridden for a while there. And
how old were you?
17, 18. Can't remember exactly, but somewhere around there.
Pretty pivotal part in like just your life.
It was, yeah, it was. So my path was, I was baseball. I was going for the draft.
Mm-hmm.
You had your college offers and various things, but I was kind of wanted to play pro, and that kind of was very pivotal for roadblock, obviously.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
Rehabbed for well over a year. Wasn't sure if I was going to be able to play baseball again because of all the head trauma. There's some question marks there.
Yeah.
So it did take a while. Started a little bit on the outfield before I moved back to infield.
I would hope.
But got back to it. Did get a full ride offer that was honored by University of Hawaii. So I went there.
Not a bad place to go.
No. Still struggle with some head issues there, and then actually started on a slide, but then tore the rotator cuff that very first year rehabbing, coming back.
Throwing or?
So it was initially on a slide. I felt it, but then it was a throw where it came
got it.
Where it was like gone after one throw. So that was another over a year of rehab. But then tried to get back there in college, junior college, and trying to get back, and still not healthy enough between the arm, and then my hips got dysplasia in my hips that following year.
Jeez.
So I was getting shooting pains up the neck when I was swinging. So at the same time, we got opportunities to kind of, people were discussing, hey, do you want to start to get into coaching and various things, and you know how hard it is to leave the game.
For sure.
But we had, I think, 8 operations by that time, and kind of grinded out. So it was a lot earlier than I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Never had an injury until I got hit in the head. So it was kind of like a transitioning point for me in the career. So
is that something that, like, do you deal with any effects from that still to this day, or is it
my wife says I do. She says I forget everything. I forget everything she says, but
of course you use that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did have obviously the concussion was severe.
Mm-hmm.
I did get hit in the head after that as well on a pitch so I had a few major concussions.
Because of that, like after this, you're saying?
Yeah, so I had one before this injury,
Okay.
but then this one was major, and then I had another one after that.
Gotcha.
Another ball to the face, actually. That was another issue,
Man.
but it was just kind of, there's a little bit of a snowball effect there. So right now I feel like everything's good and normal.
Yeah, you seem great.
Yeah, everything's good and normal, but there was a lot of plastic surgery done on my face, so it's
you can't tell.
It's way more beautiful than I was before. So
I love it.
I'm good. I'm healthy.
Good, man. That's awesome. I obviously had no idea that it was that severe, and then you went through all that. And what do you think you learned about yourself that young? Like I said, 17, such a very pivotal age, not only from a baseball player, but just from a cognitive development standpoint, right? Like you have the whole entire world in front of you, and then all of a sudden it's taken away. What do you think a young Mike Griffin learned about himself during going through all that?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So it was pivotal. Sorry, it was. I had a one-track mind. I wanted to play in the big leagues.
Yeah,
and so everything I did, from training every day to weightlifting to, I'd work with guys that were currently in professional baseball to try and push myself to train with them. So I was just kind of one-track mind, and this obviously the game was taken away for a full year, but I was also. They couldn't control the bleeding a lot, so I was fighting for my life here, and so it put a lot of things in perspective of, okay, I may not make it tomorrow, and so till tomorrow in the ICU, a couple of those nights. So it really got me thinking, okay, like what is important? What is the most important things?
Right.
Way younger than I thought. I was thinking about sports and stuff. So for me, honestly, I began a relationship with God just recently before that. But life was good and everything was rolling. But after that moment, it was just like, he really opened my eyes that there's a bigger purpose. I can use gifts and talents to serve others too, and hopefully impact other people's lives if the game's taken away. Because my life was all about me.
Sure.
And sometimes it has to be, of course, that kind of focus when you're locked in. But I'd say my priorities did change a little bit. It's like, okay, I understood that there's an eternal plan and purpose, and I want to try and have my life lived with a little bit more meaning.
Yeah.
Like how can I use these gifts, whether it's playing, to impact my teammates and my family, my life, the people around me. Or if it was transitioning to coaching, hey, how can I use this to impact the lives of others? So it did change probably in 1920, especially.
And that's, like you said, it's such a huge, massive shift in just overall thinking, right? Like, a lot of the best coaches I've been around, not to say they have something traumatic happen to them, but there's a moment in their lives where it becomes about others and serving others and trying to help others achieve their dream, right? So, I think that's what is a big part in what makes you so, highly spoken of in the hitting world, and why, it's your ability to put the individual first and not and make it like it's not about you. You don't care about how Mike Griffin does it's about how you do, right? And so I think that's a pretty cool, little segue, I guess, into your coaching career, and talking about that. So, we go to Hawaii, right? You play there a little bit. How did you get started with the Czech Republic? I think that's a question that not only everyone probably is curious to know, but myself as well. Like, how did that whole relationship, happen?
Right. So after freshman year, I was actually scheduled to go to Alaskan League.
Okay.
But then when I tore the rotator cuff, I wasn't going to be able to play a position. I was still rehabbing. So I got an opportunity. AIA, Athletes in Action, took a summer college team, summer team, to do, I think it was about 6 weeks, and went to Germany and then France and then Czech Republic.
Okay.
And part of it was, hey, I was cleared to DH, I was cleared to hit, so hey, get a couple ABs in there. And then we played some teams. I think it was a couple national teams there. There was a couple other American college teams that were playing in tournaments overseas. So we played some games and tournaments, and then we did a couple kids camps, and then we started doing some, I guess, 18 and under coaches clinics.
Okay.
So we kind of play in the morning and then do these clinics in the afternoon, or vice versa. Great experience. I did happen to play well there as well. So after that trip, a couple of the people in Ostrava, Czech Republic, and Prague, Czech Republic, stayed in touch with us and said, hey, you guys made a great impact. When you're done, would you like to be involved with coaching or player development to help us take the next step? And so we stayed in touch. It didn't happen right away. We stayed in touch, and then I went back actually for a month at the end of the following summer, just to kind of reconnect, play, see what they were talking about, kind of get a feel for the lay of the land and what the potential was.
Right.
And that trip kind of solidified, hey, this is something where if things go the way they were going, I think I can help. There's a lot of potential, but there's a lot of dots that are not being connected as far as, player development, instruction, programs, that kind of thing.
What do you think that is? Or at this time, I guess.
Yeah, at that time, it was a long time ago, and I was young. I was probably, I don't know, going 22, 23-ish, 24 maybe. But I think, first of all, there wasn't a lot of quality experience playing-wise. They had some guys scattered throughout the minor leagues, usually low minor leagues, and then they get released young, come back, but they never touched college baseball. They didn't touch a lot of baseball experiences globally. Yeah. So they were working hard at what they knew. So they would have a random coach like myself come in for a summer, teach some things, and they would try and put it in for the next 10 months until somebody else came back. Yeah. And so there's a lot of disconnect, lack of experience in some of those developing baseball countries. So we're trying to connect the dots of, how do we create pipelines into baseball cultures like the U.S. college system or Asia or different places that I've been and coached, and give these young players broader experiences, and then follow it up with professional instruction, and then hopefully higher level competition.
Right.
So,
and that's what we'll talk about Pro5 a little bit later on, but that's something that I feel like you do a great job of. Especially you've had a few guys from the Czech Republic on your teams.
Right.
Do you have any players this year?
We have one. We have Jacob Winkler, catcher from the Czech Republic.
That's cool,
he's
man.
coming in again soon. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and the reason I ask is, we look at the United States, and we view ourselves athletically superior to a lot of people, right? I think that's just a way of thinking that we've developed, not necessarily true. But you look at, like, let's say soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Over in Europe, if you put their, like the World Cup, where we haven't really done well in.
Yeah.
So do you think if we can get these players over in these countries, quality coaching for a longer period of time, playing T-ball, Little League, kind of coming up through the ranks similar to what we do, I think we'd have a lot more players that can represent in, Major League Baseball and college baseball and things like that. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think also, I think traditionally the best athletes in those countries go to play the cultural sports.
Sure.
So they go play the soccer right away growing up.
It's like our LeBron James isn't going to go play soccer.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
same kind of
Like
thing.
basketball.
Yeah.
So what's happening in some of these countries is, as we Czech qualify for the World Baseball Classic, and then plays in front of 55,000 people against Japan, and Otani's playing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You get all these experiences, and that's now broadcasted within country.
Right.
A lot of the younger Czech players are
See
like,
that.
man,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I can maybe do that.
Yeah.
And so you might still not get the top tier athlete, but the second tier athlete is still good enough to be really good.
Yep.
And has a lot of potential for baseball. And so if you can kind of create programs and an experience where these young players I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to do this. Then I think you'll see an increase
Yeah.
of good players playing.
And I think people, it takes it to that next level, of why it's just culturally, that's what they want to be good at growing up, right? So that's what they have their whole entire lives, is idolizing, whatever sport it is. So what you guys do over there is awesome, and giving kids, different paths to greatness or in any sport. So I think that's pretty awesome. You kind of mentioned it, talking about the WBC.
Yeah.
I think is one of the cooler events that baseball has, period. What have your experiences been like that? You've done it twice now, is that right? Or is it?
So I've done the World Baseball qualifiers before. That was in Mexico.
Okay.
Previously, and then in Regensburg, Germany, they qualified, and then this is the first WBC that I've coached in. This past one,
yeah,
that I've coached in. So I've been a part of the WBC qualifiers.
Mm-hmm.
So in Mexico, we had Mexico and Nicaragua, and Germany was in that group, and that was kind of a transition point for us. We played really well, really close. Mexico ended up winning. They had some great players: Adrian Gonzalez, Oliver Perez.
Yeah.
They were kind of loaded, and we lost 2-1 to them. But they were really good, and so they moved on. But that was kind of a belief tipping point where our guys were like, man, we're right there.
We got a chance.
Yeah. So it kind of put a lot of the work in, and it's fun to see their dream fulfilled and going to Japan. Yeah.
No, it was cool. I think this clip kind of went viral there, but I think it was of the Czech Republic team, and then they asked what their day jobs were.
Yeah.
A lot of sales people, business guys, things like that, and then to see them go and compete and put up a really good fight, throughout those games. I mean, I don't know what you thought, but I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, there's actually a documentary coming out.
Is there really?
But
who's doing it?
So a group in Czech Republic is doing it. I know they're trying to get some traction in the U.S. at some point, but it's a great group. Actually, 2 former players in the national team that played for me.
Okay.
They do it. They're brilliant. And there's 2 parts to it. Is the guys in the film, most of them played pro ball and then finished playing in the minor leagues, came back.
Okay.
But they wanted to still represent their country and compete. And so there's a lawyer, Mate Hema was a lawyer, international lawyer, and he'd go to work till 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Then he would eat something, drive to the park, train from 5 to 7, then go lift.
That's cool.
Now he's married with kids. You got a firefighter, same thing. And they're going from work to showering to training at the field. I mean, you're talking about commitment.
Yeah.
It's a different level that they wanted something more than most people did.
And it's more than that. It's their country too, right?
Right.
They want to, do well for their culture and their country. And I think those type of stories are the ones that come out of the WBC that I think a lot of people will resonate with.
Right.
Because it's not about, the USA going and winning or watching Shohei Ohtani strike out Mike Trout. It's,
Right.
Seeing these, I don't want to say regular people because obviously they're great athletes, but these people that have day jobs and things like that, and then all of a sudden they're competing against the very best. And it's those type of stories that not only, America wants to see the underdog story, but I think the world needs.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think it's pretty cool, man. Kind of transition a little bit more, going into MLB stuff. What exactly do you do for Major League Baseball?
Yeah, so previously I worked with Major League Baseball full-time, and it was in the international baseball development world. So mainly that was Asia. I did some part-time stuff with them in Europe and other countries.
Sure.
And then I was full-time with them in Asia. So based kind of in the Shanghai area. Okay. But then, had to Japan, Korea,
Did you live there then?
Or? I did, yeah. We lived there for years,
wow.
my wife and I. So we helped set up and as a head coach there too of the development centers in China to help their player development program.
Sure.
We did some national team training camps with China. Then we did baseball academies in Taiwan. We worked with national teams and academies in Korea, Taiwan, Japan.
What was the age group?
So 19 and under for the development centers.
Okay. But
then the national team events were usually 20 to 30. It was your senior national team guys. So there'd be some pro guys, college guys.
Right.
So it kind of varied from development centers to national team development as well.
Gotcha. And was that kind of when, I think there's you look at the Little League World Series and a lot of the Asian cultures dominate. Right. So is that kind of something that you saw come up? What was the difference from, maybe you saw guys in Little League in Canada or in the United States. What do you think was the factor of why they were so successful for such a long period of time, even to today?
Right. They just fundamentally at that age, that's all they work on is
very advanced
fundamentals. They practice for hours each day.
Yeah.
And so fundamentally they're probably more advanced than I would say us in the Western Hemisphere.
Sure.
North America, Latin America at that age.
Yeah.
We probably have some physicality to us, bigger, stronger, faster components at times. That's changing too a little bit. They're changing. Yeah. The big thing over there was like I remember we did a prospect hitting camp in Taiwan, and you had some really good hitters. Bat to ball skills are there, hand-eye coordination. They train a lot of tee and toss and BP and stuff. I think what they were trying to learn is like, okay, we were missing a little bit of the 3-run home run, or we're missing the doing damage.
Yeah.
And so they would have great at bats, out hit teams, but as some of the U.S., Canada, or Dominican, as they got bigger, stronger athletes, and you got it to older age groups, they would out hit them, play better defense, but then they may lose a game because of a 3-run home run, a mistake, right? So they're trying to get us to help transition, like, okay, how can we be who we are, but how can we do some more damage to the baseball, right? Maybe throw with a little bit more velocity rather than just have 6 or 7 different pitches and trick hitters. Right. So that's definitely come a long way. Like Japan's better, Korea's better, Taiwan's better at developing
just overall athleticism.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, I feel like every year there's a dominant pitcher coming out of Japan.
Japan's pitching staff, this WBC was one of the best pitching staffs I've ever seen.
It's crazy.
Like we faced Sasaki in our game, but he was 99 to 103 with a 92 mile split finger that starts at your belt and lands in the dirt. And he's 20 years old. But stuff wise, their staff between him and Ohtani and Darvish.
Who's the guy that Cashman was just watching over in Japan? Just doing a no-hitter when there's 28 GMs or something.
It's probably Yamamoto.
It was, yes.
Was it Yamamoto?
Yes, that's the name, yeah.
So he was filthy too. So but they had probably 7 or 8 guys that for me were almost big league all-stars. Yeah. That, due to signability, they can't sign and move over. But really, really, they've done a really good job the last few years.
It's crazy,
so.
man. And I think it's really cool to see when you're, from our perspective as people that just study mechanics and what makes guys elite, and you see some of these really, really cool things that a lot of those guys that are coming over from Japan are doing just from a mechanical perspective, and it's pretty elite,
right?
And I think the splitters now kind of become the trend in the pitch design world, or one of them, and that's because of Shohei and Sasaki and those guys over there. It's becoming just everywhere on Twitter. Every Twitter coach or every whatever has some kind of say into it. So it's cool to see the game of baseball growing on a world level.
For sure.
Yeah. So, and kind of going into MLB, something that I think is really, really cool and fun is MLB Home Run Derby X.
Yeah.
And you allowed me to be part of it for a couple events now, and something that I enjoyed a ton doing. So speak to, MLB, Home Run Derby X, what all that entails, what MLB is trying to do for the public and for the fan.
Right. So yeah, the Home Run Derby X has been a great experience. It was something that I was approached by with some former people I worked with Major League Baseball. That this is a project they want to start doing, and you want to kind of be a baseball coordinator with it and help us develop this sport. And so it's great, and appreciate your participation. You did well. Very well.
Oh, I know.
Hit some homers, robbed some homers. It was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so broadly speaking, I can't speak to the end game or the full intent of what they're trying to do long term. But our core team that's kind of been working on it is
it's the team's out of London, right?
So we have members from each office. Like there's people from New York office, London.
Gotcha.
London, Kellum Salter has been kind of spearheading it.
Yeah.
He's done a great job with everything. Creating it, designing it, and he's based out of the London office. Also have had participation in the Japan office and Mexico office as well. So it's kind of a collaborative effort.
That's cool.
To help grow the game internationally and get fans involved and connect with the players and get excited about it. As you know, baseball around the world, sometimes a 3-hour game is tough to watch for trying to engage new fans. So it's just a way to try and take some of the best elements of the game and put it into like a 30-minute competition. So what we've had teams where we've been in London, Mexico City, Seoul, South Korea. Now we're been in some of the minor league stadiums. We've been in Hartford and Fredericksburg.
Yep.
Great events. They're all sold out, and it went way better than we thought, I think.
Yeah.
But you basically have 4 teams would be at an event, and you have an MLB legend. Then you have a female superstar, one of the best female players in the world, and then you would have a prospect. So when you go around the world, it was usually a minor league prospect from that country coming up, participating.
Cool. Yeah.
And then recently in the U.S., we've added a tryout day where people,
which was hard.
Former players would play the day before in a tournament and try and earn a spot to play with an MLB legend team the following day for the big event. But yeah, it's a 45-degree angle field, so it's smaller. There's a catch zone, basically 80 feet from the outfield fence, and then you hit for 2 minutes and 30 seconds straight.
Yeah.
So you can break if you want, but most guys don't. But you're hitting, and you're trying to hit as many home runs as you can. It's like a home run derby.
What's the distance again?
It ranges like 330 is kind of max to center.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit shorter. And there's targets beyond the fence. So if you hit a target, you get double points. You're trying to hit as many home runs, and then there's also the ability for the fielders. You get 3 fielders to try and rob home runs. Which I saw you climb the fence and rob a home run.
Yeah, well,
so you get a point for catching, robbing a home run.
I think it should have been 2 points, but
it should have been. Yeah. You get a point for catching a home run. You get a point for hitting a home run. And you get double points for targets, and then you can call for a hot streak, which is 5 orange Home Run Derby X balls where you get double the points with it. So it's fast paced, it's head to head, and the fans seem to love it. It gets exciting. So yeah, it's been a crazy tour, and it looks like because of the feedback, it's probably going to be expanding next year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I the first, because we did the Fairfax test event, right, which was great, and I think we were obviously ironing out a lot of the kinks and things like that. So when I went to Fredericksburg, I didn't really know what to expect, just because it had been a few months and didn't know where we were as far as rules, things like that.
Yeah.
But then you get there and it's like everything's moving well, it's fast, and like within those months you all figured out what works and what doesn't, kind of thing. And it was like a well-oiled machine. And I will say, just obviously being a former player and athlete, just somebody that likes to compete in general.
Right.
I know a lot of guys that follow our social media saw Charlie Morgan, actually, that Arrieta picked, and he had I think the best day there. But me and him were high school teammates, and for us to go out there and compete again at that level, I just had an absolute blast.
That's awesome.
So I think me and him are still talking about it. Charlie was juiced up. I think, obviously Jake Arrieta picking him was a really cool video for him. And he was a guy that had professional aspirations that I think didn't maybe get a fair shot in those ranks. But for him to get out there and compete and to see him thrive in that environment, I thought was really, really cool. So I appreciate you guys letting us do that.
Well, you guys did fantastic. Hit a lot of homers, like I said, but that was kind of, I think, when you're able to connect, the MLB legends with these players and with the fans, it kind of brings the game close.
Yeah.
And it helps, young aspiring players, or players like you said that are young that just finished the game, their playing career got cut short. It gives them a second opportunity to compete. You get a chance to win a cash prize, but you also get a chance to win a tournament. You get a chance to win
which we did. So
right. Play in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Some of these events, and then also you get to play with the MLB legends, like you said. Johnny Gomes has been huge. Nick Swisher has been great. They've done almost all the events around the world. Jake Arrieta, who's the most power from a pitcher I've seen. Yeah.
I think he had the most distance,
score,
right? 450, wasn't it, or something?
Something like that, yeah.
And then we had Ian Desmond there too.
And Ian Desmond was there. He was, again, I think he won that last
he did,
event. It was fantastic. And there's been a few others, and of course, like the female athletes have been huge too. We've had Ashton Lansdale, Erica Piana Castelli, hard name to say, Jocelyn Allo.
She was there at the Fredericksburg one, right?
She was, yeah. So there's been just great talent where some of these young female or male players, it's a fun event. They get to play with these people and learn something too along the way. So.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And those guys that were picking the teams were great. They interacted with everybody. You guys did a great job picking who wants to run that and to get the fans involved and to get the people like the regular guys that are getting drafted, like to feel like they're part of a team with Jake Arrieta or Ian Desmond, right? I think that's a really cool experience that a lot of people are going to remember for the rest of their lives. So I think MLB is doing a great job with that, and a lot of it is a testament to you and your passion to grow the game just overseas, around the world, that type of thing. So appreciate it, Mike. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah.
So kind of going, obviously you work with MLB, you've done all these great things, but I think what you're most known for, at least around here, is Purpose Driven and Pro5. So kind of want you to have the floor as far as getting into those organizations, what that looks like and all that.
So originally I met actually Jay Stott, who's the founder of WPI with Purpose International and Purpose Driven.
Yep.
I was in Czech Republic, and he brought a team over there. Trent Mongero is also now living here as great infield instructor. Corey Lee played at NC State and played with the Rangers. They went over to Czech Republic on a mission trip one time years ago, and we connected and just kind of stayed in touch. I was still working with MLB in Asia there, but we stayed in touch, and when the time was right, we spoke about how do we take this player development model that I've had experience with Major League Baseball now at this point for years, and learned, grew, found out some things, but how do we combine like a leadership and character development program to it as well? But so anyway, we stayed in touch, and Jay offered the invitation to come out to North Carolina and say, hey, can we in Raleigh do something like this and partner with it and have an international baseball academy model where, we'll work with some major league players, minor league players, college players, but focus year round on kind of 40 high school players as well.
Sure.
And trying to create that mentoring environment for, these pro guys, college guys, just they can mentor each other and help prepare them to have success at the next level. So that was kind of how that relationship got started. it took a few years for my wife and I to decide to move back to the U.S., but once we did, the passion was basically how do we help players prepare to have success on and off the field at the next level.
Right.
So it's just more than just baseball, but leadership, life, faith. Can you grow in these areas? And so when you step onto a college campus or you step into pro ball, you're able to handle yourself and thrive on the field, but also off the field. All the different things that come around the game.
Oh yeah.
The good things and the bad things, or the good things and the temptations. You can look at all of them and say, how do I respond well to this? What do I say yes to? What do I say no to? And it keeps me on path to kind of get the most out of what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's player development and leadership development model.
And I think that's really cool, and something when I first heard about what you guys do and what great alumni you all have and player and coaches that work with you guys, my first thought was, man, I wish I had that when I was a kid.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I loved my high school experience, and I had an awesome career, and enjoyed all my best friends, and that was a great journey for me. But when it comes to just developing and being ready for that next level, especially going into my freshman year in college at Ole Miss, I don't think I was necessarily prepared from a mental standpoint, a physical standpoint, what it took to be ready. And obviously you learn those things, and you adjust. But I think what you guys do over there is next level for a lot of those kids getting ready to. I mean, and most of them are going to play in college baseball. You have a ton of talented kids over there, so trying to get them ready, and get them around those type of players to eliminate that star-struck factor earlier in their career. I mean, you guys have a lot of big leaguers that come back and speak. What are some of your favorite guys that are part of the program that are talking to the kids, and do you see the kids kind of get nervous when those guys come around?
Man. There's been a great group of people that have spoken into these guys' lives. I mean, I think now it's kind of part of the culture, the things they get excited about. They get excited about hearing them. But last I think a week ago we had Dave Jost, who's now the Washington Nationals senior advisor, but been a coach in the big leagues for years and a lot of years under his belt there, and he was great. We had Mark Melanson. We've had I even Jake Garrity and Johnny Gomes and Ian Desmond spoke to a group up in Virginia. We've had Trot Nixon has built a lot of these guys. I know Scott Emerson, who's coached you in the big leagues, pitching coach with the A's, always speaks to these guys. So, I mean, there's just been plenty of great players that kind of get back. I mean, Max Schrock and Jerry Sands are kind of two recent guys that are just still playing that are speak to them. So we try and surround them each month. We have a kind of an MLB guest speaker, JJ Piccolo, Kansas City Royals GM. Spoke to him. Bobby Evans, former World Series champion with the Giants. I mean, there's plenty of people. It just keeps going on. But every month we usually have a new guest speaker that kind of shares, life lessons from the game. What can you do now in your player development journey to prepare for the next level? Because it is getting more competitive. Yeah,
of course. And I think at every level it continues to get more competitive. And I think what's really cool about what you guys do is you guys play junior college teams. These kids what's the typical age for like your first team or whatever you want to call it, and then obviously we have some development teams that we've talked about, but those guys are 17 years old on average, probably.
Average 17. It ranges probably 16 to 19, but average age is probably 17, 18 is kind of the main core age.
And a lot of those JUCO guys are 20?
Yeah, it depends now. We they're 19 to 22 now.
Oh, that's right. I guess COVID kind of pushed that back a little bit.
Yeah, it's been great for our competition, but you got a lot more Division I transfers into junior college now. The transfer portal obviously has changed college baseball, and so now you got a lot of players transferring out and spending 2 years in Division I and maybe going to JUCO for one or various places. So
and I think you're playing. It's like playing up when you're younger, right? I think to bring out the competition, not only from a college level, but you go into pro ball as an 18-year-old. A lot of those guys that you're going to go play in Arizona with are 24 years old, grown man. A lot of them have kids. You know what I mean? So I think it kind of prepares you, not only from a competition standpoint, but just from a a feeling of, okay, I can play on the same field as those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's kind of been our model is on the baseball field, the player development side is let's try and expose these players to the highest level of competition as possible. So number one, you want to expose them because you got to see the areas that you want to get better at, right? A lot of these guys have never failed in high school baseball or in some of these showcase tournaments or events. There's not a lot of consistent exposure to areas that you got to develop at. So that's number one for us. And we do that by playing some of the college teams that, not just the velocity, but they know how to pitch, they know how to play the game.
Right.
And so if you can expose them early on in the fall, now you have something to work with, you have something to teach, you can kind of give them direction. So expose them to a high level of competition. The second level of competition for us too is like, now we take 40 players every year. That's kind of all we take at each kind of location. But, for example, last year we have Gavin Gallagher who's committed to UNC shortstop. You have Lee Ellis who's committed to South Carolina at shortstop.
Yep.
Levi Brown committed to NC State at shortstop. So just within practice, they're competing against one another.
Yeah.
And so that also elevates their game. So it's the outside competition. Hey, we want to try and find top teams to expose where we need to get better. But then it's also the in-house competition.
Sure.
It's like you're playing with guys that are like-minded. They want to prepare for the next level, and they're good. And so,
yeah. No, I think that's competition breeds success.
Right.
I think in any environment. I think we tweeted this the other day, or whatever it's called now, where we want to have a competitive environment, even in here, like from a development standpoint. We want to have guys push each other in here because at the end of the day, that's only going to make them better. And if it's something where it's maybe you realize, okay, maybe I'm not made for this kind of thing. So, and for the kids that you're talking about, all those shortstops, they're gonna if they didn't come to you guys, they probably would have never experienced that before. And then all of a sudden, you get to UNC and there's a senior at your spot, or there's a junior at your spot, and he had a pretty good year last year. Like you got to compete with that guy. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like you want to win and you want to do well as a team, but you also want to play, and that the way you get to the big leagues or the highest level is through playing.
Right.
So I think that prepares them in that sense, which is pretty cool because not a lot of, like you said, with high school players, a lot of them are dominating whatever 3A, 4A school that they're in, and then you really get to test yourself at that level. So I think that's pretty cool. So your title there is development director, right? So how does that go beyond performance? And you kind of touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
As far as just getting these kids ready to play and the things that are on and off the field type thing. But how would you speak to that?
Yeah, so, kind of our core few founders to get it going all have kind of multiple roles. But yeah, from an on-field role, director of baseball development, kind of overseeing that is kind of enforcing that player development model and having a plan and a system in place for that.
Right.
So expose them to high level competition. We want to follow it up with professional instruction. So like the next step is, okay, how do we address it? And so we want to surround them with mentoring coaches that care about them and are going to invest in them.
Sure.
So we got amazing staff. Sean Gallagher is there with outfielders and hitters. You got Sammy Serrano, who's with catchers and hitting coach, and Justin Kuntz with catchers and hitting, and Mac Jenkins, and then two of our Mac Jenkins, former big league coach for years too, and a couple of our initial coaches as well. You got Corey Lee, who was big league with the Rangers, and he's a pitching coach. Drew Anderson finished up with the Rays and the Reds, infield instructor, hitting guy. They're all fantastic. So the next step was for me to help surround these guys with good staff that can build into them and follow up with that professional instruction. And then lastly, is quality repetition. So you got to have a program and a system in place where these guys are getting the instruction, but then have an environment where they can address it and attack it and get good repetition and get good performance out of them. And then you throw them back in the fight. It's like, okay, well, let's test it again. Let's go compete. And then try and kind of repeat that cycle. Yeah. So that's kind of is overseeing that. Obviously, there's a lot that goes in with that, but I think that if we can have a good system of player development that exposes them, follows up with professional instruction, quality repetition, and then back to competing, I think that's where you see players develop, and that's where we've seen a lot of success where players have stepped on the college campuses and freshman year they're like, I'm comfortable, I'm good, and they're performing.
Right.
Or even in pro ball. A couple just quick examples. I don't want to leave any players out because a lot of players had good years, but you got Dominic Fritton and Eli Serrano at NC State this year, both fantastic. I know you know them well.
Yeah.
Both fantastic freshman years. They showed up ready to go and impacted at the ACC level. You had Ryan Clifford this year's first full year of pro ball.
Where's he?
High A. His first year at 19 or whatever.
He's doing really well.
Yeah, I think he had 24 homers, 80 something RBIs early on, and again, just they were kind of ready to go. So
because they're from all the stuff that you guys have been preparing for, like what, and speaking to more on the field stuff, I've heard from numerous guys, you're a hitting guru if you want. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but what's kind of like your philosophy? Is there anything, and this is going to sound stupid, but when I'm doing the home run derby X thing, I'm like, Mike, what do I got to do? And then all of a sudden, all right, we got this. I'm like, okay. And then I had a much better round. So like, what is it? Do you think that, is everybody different? Is there absolutes in hitting?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I've learned from plenty of amazing hitting coaches. I mean, Tim Hires, I think he's one of the best in the world. I've been able to work with him a lot of off seasons. He's one of our pro hitting consultants. Jim Lefevre, got to work with him a lot.
Okay, I know that name.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people I can name that have kind of helped guide me along the way. But first of all, like from a hitting philosophy standpoint, we always say like your approach is more important than your mechanics, and your approach affects your mechanics. So a lot of times what you're thinking and how you're thinking it, trying to take a complex thing and make it as simple as possible. I think that's where you got to start. And there's obviously we can talk about hitting approach forever, but understanding that it's connected. My hitting approach, like where do I want this pitch and where do I want to hit it? Like breaking it down to when my front foot gets in the box, here's what I'm looking for, and here's where I want to hit it.
Yeah.
We got to get there. As far as game planning, you want to try and know your opponent. And then try and break it down to, what is this fastball doing so I can stay on that. Where do I want his off-speed pitch to start that makes me go, and where does it start where I have to take it? So it kind of starts there. And then, from a swing development, from a mechanics standpoint, there's plenty of things to talk about. But obviously we want to start with our approach, getting good pitches to hit. You're only as good a hitter as the pitches you get, obviously, but we work a lot on getting to an athletic or strong balance position and work a lot on an efficient bat path. Like if I had to break down all the mechanics, like you can talk load and separation and rotation and swing path and your head position. There's a lot of things you talk about, but I think during your gather and separation, being able to kind of create energy inside of this imaginary box on either side of your head. How much energy can I create inside of there? Can I maintain a strong balance so that if I'm a little off time, I can ride out my balance, ride out my legs. And then obviously, if I can efficiently get the barrel behind and stay through as long as possible, that's going to give me the most chance for success. And so when we talk about developing hitting mechanics, without going into detail, if I had to simplify it, we want to balance creating time and creating energy. So like, how do we create as much time in my mechanics where I can see the baseball a long time, I can recognize the pitch, and I can make a good decision? Like, I feel like I'm in a good place as a hitter. If things speed up and I don't have a lot of time because there's a lot of additional movements back and forth, I'm going to be in trouble. But at the same time, I still want to do damage to the baseball.
Right.
So I don't want to just be stopped where I have a lot of time, but I'm not doing anything. So we just talk about like creating time and energy, that tension. So if we can have an imaginary box on each side of our head, kind of down through our knees, down through the ground, when I load and stride, if I can keep my head inside of that box and I can create some efficient movements inside of that box, then I'm going to give myself a chance to do damage, but also make good decisions. And that's, I think, helps hitters kind of
that makes a ton
work
of
on their
sense.
swing.
Like when you're saying head inside like the box, right? Like kind of, because it sounds very similar to pitching. Like I think just a rotational sport as a whole, baseball is. So there's a lot of similar things, but when I'm trying to keep my head basically over my belly button kind of thing, like
Right.
staying stacked. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah,
sort of thing?
absolutely.
And how when you say time, how do you create time? Is it more of a mental mechanism in there that's allowing you to feel like you have more time? Is it a head position type thing where it's like, if I'm here, I'm closer to the ball, so I'm losing time to my bat kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, I think it's both. I think like when we talk about creating time for yourself, in the batter's box, I think actually Scott Emerson talked about this on the pitching side with me one trip, and Bushy I think mentioned something before hitting coach with the
No Bushy.
with the A's, but you know, first of all, you don't want to lose time. So your goal is to make time, but you don't want to lose time by, I say, like your head, your front side jumping fast, being too fast towards the pitcher.
Sure.
You know, talking with Adrian Gonzalez, hitting with him last year a little bit. You know, he just talked about, you know, when the pitcher shows you his hip, when he gets loaded, I show him mine. Like that was a way for him to start making sure you create time by creating, you create time by starting on time. Like, so you want to have some sort of trigger in the dugout, you know, watching video on deck circle where it's like, I make sure I start on time.
My clock starts at this point.
Right. This is my visual trigger of here's when I want to start.
Right.
Every pitcher may be different. Some guys, they show you their hip. It might be slide step, it might be quick.
Yeah, what do you do with like Cueto? Like if a guy's doing all the shimmies and things like that.
Right. I almost wait till the arm comes up.
Okay.
I would ignore everything. I would ignore everything he did.
Yeah.
And Mac Jenkins coached him. And so we talked about it. We talked about him yesterday actually.
Okay.
But I would ignore everything until like the arm starts to come up. Because at that point he's got to go. Now it's just simple gather and go. So you want to find that trigger that says, here's when I want to get started. That makes sure I have enough time to do the rest of my swing, you know, to do the rest of the flow of it.
Yeah.
So I would say, you don't want to be too quick and fast with the head and the front side. You want to get started on time, that creates it. And we talk a lot about gathering like kind of into the center of your body, into your back leg. That keeps me balanced throughout my forward move as I begin to stride. That helps me stay centered. You know, a lot of guys when they lose time because they'll push back in their load, and then now they got to come out of it and rush forward.
Their reaction is a reaction kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk a lot about gathering into a strong center, and trying to maintain that. So that helps me create time. And then I'd say lastly, we do talk a lot about tunneling the baseball well.
Okay.
Like we do want to. The earlier we see the baseball, the better. So we do want to make sure that our eyes, we know his release point. Like our eyes are going to have a soft focus on them, but then they're going to transition to, hey, I want to see the ball as early as I can.
That was literally my next question. How do we focus on, you know, one of the better hitting coaches I had was my high school hitting coach, and that was a big thing where he had where it was soft focus and defined focus, where it was like pick out something, if it's his top half of his body, whatever, you know, and then we find the ball at release type thing. Is that something that still stands today?
I mean, I think so. I think there are hitters that maybe are different.
Yeah. Some of the better hitters I've been around are like, they want to find a tunnel out of my hand. So like if they see a breaking ball and it pops that much, I'm not swinging, or I am swinging, right? Or if I see the breaking ball start at this spot, or if I see the fastball out of this lane. So I guess it does differ. Yeah,
exactly. And we talk a little bit about when we tunnel, knowing the release point, but it's almost like a soccer ball size tunnel.
Okay.
And we can, from the hand, the release point, wherever that is, into the hitting zone or into the zone where I'm looking.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to look for a zone that's like a baseball size. It's too small. The game's too hard.
Right.
But we think like a soccer ball size is a good zone and a good tunnel to imagine a soccer ball size tunnel coming at you.
Right.
And staying within that, tracking balls within that tunnel kind of helps me receive the ball and then make a decision. I think if my window's too big and I'm just kind of looking everywhere, I'm trying to like find the ball and then I chase a lot. I think a lot of hitters that don't kind of have a soft focus to tunnel, they're usually guys that chase quite a bit. They can still hit, but they're going to chase a lot more than if they're really good at seeing the baseball.
Yeah, the focus is kind of being reined in, I guess. And that kind of, you know, when we're talking about, you know, hitting as a whole, right? We're looking at we're in the day and age of analytics.
Right.
We have launch angles, which I don't know how you feel about that. Exit velos, and obviously these are good metrics. I think to some extent. How much do you guys use analytics at Pro5? What are your overarching umbrella thoughts, I guess, on the game as a whole today? What do you feel about it, man?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. We do love to use data and analytics. Like it's a great tool. We do trust our coaches to kind of help filter that, because I think a lot of it for the players isn't as important to know, or at certain ages it becomes more important.
Sure.
But I think obviously, whether it's through TrackMan, I know Sammy Serrano, our hitting coach now, does Blast and does various analytical things with players. So I think there's definitely an important role for data and analytics. You want to take all the information. I think there's got to be a balance, because the actual action of hitting is so difficult that as soon as your mind gets clouded or overcrowded, it's hard to compete.
Sure.
So you always want to make sure that you take all the data and you simplify it to make the simplest plan you can for that pitch. So there's data and analytics on opposing pitchers. That's one thing. Your individual swing analytics, you're talking about launch angle and various things like those we do measure them, and they're good to measure. I think sometimes they can get overemphasized, or you can talk about it without talking about it.
Sure.
It helps some hitters. Some hitters, they do want to dig into it. So for us, launch angle, for us, we focus on how do I, once I've recognized the plane of the pitch, I want to get the barrel behind and stay on plane with it as long as possible, right? That's almost the same thing as launch angle.
Right.
The longer I stay palm up and my head stays down and I stay in a good posture in my body, the longer I'm probably gonna have a little upward angle after contact. I'm gonna create, and I'm gonna maintain that plane.
Yeah.
If my nose starts to pull, if my top hand starts to turn, if I come up in my legs early, I will lose launch angle.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of hitters can, if you might not have to talk about launch angle. You can talk about how do we want to, work our back arm to get behind the ball and through. I think where hitters get in trouble is they try and get their launch angle before they've recognized the plane of the pitch.
Sure.
So they're trying to create it too early.
Yeah.
And now you have no adjustability out front because you've already created the plane. So if the pitch has late action, late movement, I have no adjustability.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that, I have a good first move into the zone. Like I talk about approaching down and forward.
Yeah.
Once I kind of recognize the plane of the pitch, I've, trained my body to get on plane with that pitch and then stay on plane with that pitch. So I think not creating launch angle too early before you let the pitch play out
makes sense.
Is huge, because if you try and create that launch angle too early, if you dump the barrel, you lose it, or you create that plane, a lot of pitchers and stuff will recognize that and try and expose you. So I think there's a balance.
Sure.
To it for sure.
No, that's great. And there's so many guys on Twitter nowadays that are teaching different things. And, in today's generation, how do you manage that? There's so many kids, I'm sure, that are influenced in some way or another through a online source. That's just how we operate now, right? So when you have a kid that comes to you and say, well, I saw X guy do this on X or Instagram or whatever, how do you kind of, talk to them about that, and how, sometimes it's not always the best thing to find whatever you're finding on Instagram or YouTube?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's definitely a lot more of that. I'll just leave it to Sammy and Corey and Mac to deal with the players on those. But no, actually, and I'm the worst social media person. I'm on it very
I am
little.
too, I get it.
Probably because of that. So I think there's a couple things too. As you begin to have a large database of hitters that you've worked with, we've worked with a lot of, MLB or professional hitters in college, and you kind of create years of database where you realize that, some hitters have to think certain ways to get their body to move a certain way.
Sure.
And so some hitters will think they're doing something, and they're maybe not, but they have to tell themselves to do it to be successful. If that makes sense.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So I think understanding every body moves different. But there are certain swing principles, like
Sure.
you do have to work within some principles of the swing. And so when you kind of start to leave those core principles is kind of when I say, hey, that's a red flag there. And that teacher, whether it's on social media or wherever it is, it might not be ill intent. It may be meaning well. It may be interpreting something like I saw this in video. But there's so many, the video is so tricky because it's helpful to be at the game or see the full game and then have the video.
Right.
Because sometimes you're analyzing a swing, but you don't get to see the timing. Like, was he on time?
Right.
Was he chasing that ball out of the zone a little bit? Was it late action? Did he get fooled? So
Was
body
the pitch before even, or like,
right?
There's so many different factors.
So I think the big thing when looking at video is like it's the context. Like, okay, how was this swing or this pitch performed? Was it even optimal for that player? Like, would he say that was a good swing?
Right.
And then secondly, understanding like, what that hitter trains like. So you might try and teach what he does, but if you knew how he thought to get there, you might teach differently too. So for example, I know some very good big league hitters. I won't say their names just to say it, but
sure.
But like they really focus on their training staying above, in, and through, and hitting low ground balls above, in, and through. Because they know they have a tendency to pull off,
right,
or to kind of lift early. And so if you see a swing where they're doing this launch angle and doing it, they might have done that in video, but their thought process and their training
much different.
Is this is how I'm training myself because I have a tendency to overgo this way. So, so I think understanding context when looking at those videos is huge. And again, seeing how those players train is probably more important than analyzing their game video because you'll see what helps get them to the game video. It might be different than what you think. And then anything for me filtering like outside of the swing principles.
Okay.
What I mean by that, like for example, to have good bat path, you want to work in and through the baseball, right? So movements like if all of a sudden now you got this front side move rather than a backside move. So the hitter's first move is flying out and causing him to come around the baseball early. Yeah, he may have hit a pull side homer there. But that hitter may have said, yeah, well, I got beat. I had to fly open to get to it. Yes, I had a good result, but that's not what I'm aiming for.
Sure.
So I would say like to try and teach all of a sudden now, hey, turn the upper body as fast as you can, come around. Like that's leaving the principle of a good clean bat path.
And there's
that makes sense.
100%. Like if I learned a lot what you just said. Like, for me, even when I was throwing, like sometimes when I would think one thing, it probably wasn't biomechanically correct, but it helped me get in those positions because maybe I did have a tendency to fly open, right? So that makes a ton of sense. And kind of going off of that, you see so many big leaguers get fooled by breaking balls and still hit them out because of the strength that grown men have. But I guarantee if you look at it at their swing in a vacuum, they're like, dude, that wasn't what I wanted to do. I got fooled, but I just got forearms for days. I got it out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that was a really great answer, and I think not only myself but a lot of people will take that and hopefully hear that and take it to heart a little bit. So Mike, we've been here for a little bit. I don't want to keep you too long. I want to ask you one last question though. You're an espresso. You have an affinity for espresso.
It's a problem.
It can be. What the best cup of espresso you've ever had in your world travels, and what are you drinking on a daily basis as far as what brand?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. It is a very important part of the day. So after living in Europe for a while, it was hard to kind of come back to North America. Americans are still probably the leading the way in sports and different things, but
not espresso.
So El Pantheon in Rome was one of my favorite all time espressos.
What made it so good?
It's creamy. It's flavor where it's not too bitter or too sour. And smooth. And if you feel like you can have 3 of them and it doesn't go crazy, it's pretty good espresso. So say that there's in Prague we had plenty Cafe Louvre, but Movie Shalek I think it's called. But so there's a couple. And
can I get any? You can't buy these as beans though, can you? Like
you can. Actually, I bring some home with me, but
right.
I'll have to see what Amazon has to offer.
Okay.
But yeah, locally, obviously counterculture is we like that locally, but a couple good ones. In Phoenix, Arizona, we had some great ones.
Where was it?
Cartel.
Cartel's good. I've had Cartel.
Okay, I love Cartel. And Tate.
I've never had Tate.
It's in Boston. I think they have one in Virginia
okay.
now, but I think they serve Stumptown out in New York or something. But
Gotcha.
Those are good ones.
All right, cool.
I like the Italian though, the Illy.
So if we're going espresso, we're going Italian.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Italian it is. Mike Griffin, thank you very much for coming, man. Sorry for taking your time, but it's very valued, and we here are excited to put this one out. So thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. It's been fun. And thanks for all your support with BYoung Physiotherapy and all the stuff you do in partnership with our guys.
Of course.
Really appreciate it. You help make us better. So
yeah, man. We love working with those guys, the elite athletes that y'all bring in, and guys if we're doing pitch design or if we're rehabbing or whatever it may be. It's fun to work with those guys. So we really appreciate everything y'all do too.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike.